The storylines are amazing from this game. If you think about it now, and we all know it, think about it for a second. About 4 weeks into the season, Gator Twitter pretty much had decided that the 4 greatest coaches in the history of college football were Saban, Rockne, Bud Wilkinson, and Lane Kiffin.
That's right.
Yeah, that was the Mount Rushmore. Okay,
Yep.
Kiffin was the greatest coach in the history of the sport, and all Gator fans cared about. I can't tell how many Gator fans even would tell me nothing's going to work unless we get Kiffin. The only way we can survive this is if we get Kiffin.
I had already started watching Ole Miss games.
Just to see what they look like.
Yeah.
So now Billy Napier just beat Lane Kiffin after beating Brian Kelly. After beating Brian Kelly with a first-round draft pick quarterback, and Billy Napier beat him with a freshman playing on one leg, he now beat Lane Kiffin with probably a second-round draft pick playing quarterback, is a 6-year senior who played great, by the way, until the end of the game, with a freshman quarterback playing on one leg. It was one of the most exciting wins the Gators have had in many years, and I talked to people that were there, and they said it rivaled 2019 long run by P. Ryan against Auburn. It rivaled Jarvis Moss blocking the kick. I heard it was insane. Did you talk to anybody that was there?
And I think a pristine day, like you had talked about. It's not going to be super hot, but a pristine day. And I think Florida fans are just over the moon for this team. As shocking as that is.
If you think of the storyline that everybody wanted him fired, many of us thought he was going to be fired. Scott Strickland, you can rip Scott Strickland all you want. Scott Strickland came out and said, "This is our coach." And even though they lost that Texas game because they played without a quarterback and weren't very good that day, that has fueled them to 2 straight wins. This football team now, if they beat FSU, and I'm going to talk about that game in a second, but if they beat Florida State, he will have gone 7-5 against what many people were calling the toughest schedule in college football history, 7-5, while losing his senior quarterback midseason.
Even before then.
And correct.
By the third of the way through.
And then, good point, and losing his freshman phenom quarterback for a game and a half against the 2 best teams on the schedule.
And his top 3 corners.
And a lot of other players, too. He's a great receiver, great cornerbacks. And they will have gone 7-5. Now, I want to be careful. I don't want to be 3 weeks ago we thought the guy was the worst coach in the history of the sport. Now I'm making him Newt Rockne. He's not that, okay? There's still some flaws. But the one thing that jumped off the page for me, and there's so many storylines here, man, do they play hard for him. Man, do they play hard. The question I've got, and I won't know the answer to this, is how did Cam Jackson and Caleb Banks, particularly Caleb Banks, go from invisible to Caleb Banks might be a first rounder. He's got to come out now. I was hoping he'd come back. He's got to come out now.
Absolutely.
And the way that defense is playing, was there really truth to the story Matt Hayes tells that some of the players went in and said, "Coach, we need to simplify"?
I don't know about the specifics of that.
But something like that. But some of the players went in.
Absolutely. After in the first bye week, it was Napier's made it very clear.
The players,
What do we need to do? Give us your input.
And so now Florida finds a way to win against Ole Miss, knocks Ole Miss out of the playoff picture, beats LSU first. Now all of a sudden, this is a Florida team probably playing as well as anybody in the country other than maybe the elite. I'm not going to say they're Oregon or Ohio State or Georgia yet, although they played Georgia awfully tough. But if you take away Georgia, Ohio State, Miami, Oregon, Texas, maybe 2 or 3 others, would you almost pick them on a neutral field against the rest of the field?
I wouldn't, because I still think some of this is LSU's got real problems in their culture, and Ole Miss is a choking program.
Yeah, and
so
probably,
that's why I
agree.
still,
Fair point.
I mean, as great as these 2 wins are, I still don't think, like if Florida went to Penn State, I think they're getting handled.
Yeah, okay. So good point. Fair point.
Really?
Yeah. Well, but it's at least a discussion point.
Oh, I would love to see that game.
Yeah,
I think Florida would beat Penn State.
I don't know if I'd say
I think Florida would beat a lot of teams right now, man.
Well, that was my point. Is I would think if Florida played anybody other than the 5 or 6 elite, at least it would be a conversation. That's the point.
Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. I might pick Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. I love the way they're playing.
You think Penn State would win the game?
I mean, but I think you just have to be kind of careful.
Yeah,
I
agree.
They're two great wins.
Yeah. And by the way, they got outgained in both games. Here's another by the way.
I mean, Ole Miss missed like 3 touchdowns by like a millimeter
and a field goal. Yeah, and so
got a lot of guys hurt.
Yeah, and right. So, but let me say this: if Steve Spurrier or Urban Meyer had won those 2 games with a freshman quarterback, with some really good play calls down the stretch, with far fewer yards but enough yards to make key plays, we'd be saying that's why we have the best coach in the country. We would be. Because those games were well coached. I didn't agree with that. I still don't love his offense, but I think for the most part, he got about every drop out of those guys the last 2 games. So now here's Florida at 6-5. So it totally has turned it around. You said they got a bunch of recruits today, like they're flipping guys left and right.
3 guys flipped to them today.
So mostly 3 stars, but still
one
guys.
really blue chip linebacker that was committed to USC. He's from Florida, but was committed to the Trojans and flipped, and then a 3-star receiver, 3-star offensive lineman.
So I'm going to get to the Florida State-Florida game in a minute, but before I do, the significance of that win for Florida might be the big, and you can see that's why Billy Napier was so emotional after the game. He knows he was the guy that was almost fired.
Right.
He knows it. And now it all came full circle that he now might have a chance to coach his team without fighting his own fans on Twitter. I guess that's the point.
Yeah, without a doubt. I even saw Chris Doering interviewing Billy Napier today on Twitter, and he asked him, Doering asked Napier, do you have any, is there any like, hey, I told you so. And he was like, no, because I understand it. When the way we were playing in September, we were not good, and fans had every right to be disappointed, which I appreciate with Napier, because sometimes when this happens with coaches, they do get an arrogance that, like, how dare you guys doubt me? And, and so I appreciate that Napier can have the self-awareness to know that he was on his way to getting fired, and justifiably so, but he has picked it up. He has obviously built a culture that is impenetrable, and looking at where this team now goes, it's exciting. And look, they are playing really well. I'm not, you're right. Outside of the elite, could they go and contend? Yeah, I mean, I just think that they have lost 5 games, so it's one of those things that I try to temper it. But look, I mean, we thought this program was headed to a complete restart.
4 wins.
And right. Not making a bowl game, and now to have this surge, and it all comes down to DJ Lagway. I mean, you have to give Billy Napier. I mean, he found this kid in Willis, Texas, that was a 5-star. Napier concedes. Why did we get him? We were the first ones to him. We identified him early, and that really helped. But there's no way DJ Lagway would have come to Florida. There's nothing connecting him here. And Napier was able to go into Texas and pull out arguably the player of the year, and then get him ready to play way earlier than what they anticipated from a starting standpoint. And the kid is phenomenal. I mean, I'll say this again, because I keep waiting for this stat to change. But Lagway against Ole Miss was 10 of 17 for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. So he has 180 passing yards on 10 completions. So again, DJ Lagway, as we go into the final week of the regular season, he is averaging 18.7 yards per completion. If he had enough attempts, and he's close, he's got 135, so he needs probably another 20, 30 more to get on the board there. He's averaging 18.7 yards per completion. The leader is at 17. Jackson Dart is at 15.9, who's running one of the most explosive offenses in the country. And Cam Ward, who might win the Heisman, is at 14.1. He's at 18.7 yards of completion, and he's a true freshman and got out of 2 or 3 sacks on Saturday. And again, when he hit the play to Badger, completely sets a tone. It's early second quarter. You've taken the lead. You've drawn first blood, and you've made Ole Miss nervous. And then that led to Ole Miss melting down with the missed opportunities, the muffed punt, the things that we thought might be in the Rebels, because this isn't a game they're used to being in where everything, all the pressure was on Ole Miss.
Yeah, 2 or 3 things about Lagway, and I'm going to get something else in a moment. The most impressive thing about him, and again, he's got a lot of growth to show. And by the way, I tweeted this too. He's playing on one leg. So the things he's going to be able to do, zone reads, scramble plays, naked bootlegs. And I'm not making him a running quarterback, but 4 or 5 times. Look at Jackson Dart. 4 or 5 times made big runs. Lagway can't do that now because he's playing on one leg. Imagine what he'll be when he can do that. The most impressive thing about DJ Lagway, and it all goes together with the deep accuracy, is how poised he is when things break down around him. Part of it's how strong he is.
His ability to evade the sack.
Yeah, evade the sack and stay strong and get the ball out, but he doesn't get flustered. When it's all collapsing around him, the sidearm throws, the throws when he's getting hit, to your point, JJ, avoiding the sack, that's what stands out. He looks like an injured, bad leg, fifth-year senior finishing up his career because he never looks rattled. The never looking rattled is even the one quarterback sneak that they called timeout. The way he handled that, I don't know if you remember the play or not. He waited, then ran out. I mean, so there's a poise about him. So, but I will tell you, with all due respect to Lagway, and he may be the reason for all this, he's a big part of it. I cannot figure out how they suddenly are a mid-'80s Florida defense, how they are suddenly a mid-'90s Florida defense. Okay, Shane Titter playing the better players. Okay, maybe they changed their scheme a little bit. But Caleb Banks is playing as well as any defensive tackle in the country. Those ends, Tyreek Sapp is playing as well as any rush end. The way they're playing on defense, and maybe that's what it is. Mickey Andrews told me one time, the longtime defensive coordinator at FSU, he said, listen, Frank, what I'm not going to do is confuse them. I got better players than the guys trying to block me. Just make sure they know where to go. Make sure they play free and easy. And I wonder if that's happening, but it's an amazing thing. Now,
and particularly to lose Gates on like the second play of the game,
right?
Who's been one of your best defensive players.
Right.
Once that happened,
yep.
In Ole Miss coming off a bye week, I was like, oh, this is getting ready to be really ugly.
And they never batted an eye. I thought 18 was replacing Gates. Billy said afterwards it was 0, the kid from Jacksonville.
Yeah, Denson.
Denson is the kid that went in and replaced Gates and played great.
And, Thornton is playing, 15 tackles, 2 picks.
Yeah, 2 picks, right. And the 2 picks weren't easy. They said he threw it right to him. Yeah, we still had to go catch it while falling down both times,
I will say, Saban made the comment about Auburn on game day about I coached at that play 17 times, and I'm convinced it's haunted.
Yeah.
That pass that Dart threw, how that ball hung for as long as it hung. If you watch the final 5 feet of that ball.
Right.
It's almost like there's wind pushing it up. It just stayed in the air for Thornton to get there and secure the catch.
So, but here's what I will tell you. Final thing, and then we'll get to some other SEC. We got Bucky to talk Jags at the top. You have to finish the job. All of it. Florida would almost be better off playing a 5-6 FSU team as a 4-point road favorite than a really bad 2-9 team as a 15-point road favorite. Because if you lose this one, the momentum's gone.
Yeah,
hang on, let me finish.
Yeah.
If you lose the game, the momentum's gone. I wouldn't think FSU can beat them. I would think Florida will handle FSU. But back to the point.
If you lose this game, it's a total disaster.
Yeah, it erases everything you've done.
Well, yeah, because everybody will say what I just said, that LSU isn't bought into Brian Kelly.
Right.
So they beat a toxic team in LSU, and Ole Miss is the all-time champion of, there's something riding on this game. Right. Let me play awful and lose it.
And you also bail Mike Norvell out, and his season is saved after that.
That's right, because if you're FSU, that's right. If you're FSU, it's been one of the worst seasons in school, maybe the worst season in school history. I know there were
expectations.
Yeah, I know they're 0-10 and 73.
This has to be the worst season.
But this might be the worst season in school history. But the one chance they can't save face, but if I'm an FSU fan, I think, listen, it's been a disaster. But if we can beat the Gators for a fourth straight time, third straight time, if we can beat the Gators for a third straight time, ruin their Cinderella finish, end the season having won 2 in a row. That'll mean Luke Kromenhoek did something, so we feel better about our guy. So that's what they're thinking. And again, I don't think they can beat Florida. I think the gap between the two teams is too significant, like it has been FSU and most of the teams they've played. But you got to finish the job, and I expect that they will finish the job. But I mean, that's because if you do, if you finish the job, if you beat, it doesn't matter what you beat it by. If you win the game, now you're 7-5, 3 straight wins. You did beat Brian Kelly, Lane Kiffin, and Mike Norvell. Say what you want about Norvell now, but he was the hottest thing going last year. Okay, right. So you beat those 3 to end. You're going to a bowl. The recruiting signing days in between those two. You now don't have to you don't have the biggest hurdle you've had, and that's your own people. You now don't have to recruit against your own people on social media. The biggest challenge he's had is recruiting against Gator fan on Twitter. And now one more win, and that's over. Now, it may come back one day, but it's over. An amazing win for Florida. Let's take a break.
Hey, it's Matt Hayes. Thanks so much for watching the 1010XL Gators channel. For more college football coverage, check out the Knowles channel.